I've sold my new favourite lens. So it's also my newest lens that I'm selling, which is the Nikon 58 1.4g. So if you follow the channel, I only got this lens about 4 months ago and I loved it. Well, I said this.
So, Russell, which is your favourite? If I only have one, if I had to choose now, it would be the 58. I knew you were going to say that because it's the one you just bought. So, yeah. So you're going to get divorced from your 51.2. I'm going to give it time. So there's still a lot to discover with the 58. I want to see you use it in a load more weddings. Come back in, say, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Yeah. Then let's see.
And my review of it, well, you can see I compared it to the 51.2 and the 51.8 Z glass. I was even actually considering getting rid of the 51.2. I actually boxed this up and made sure I had all the accessories and it was in good condition, and got a few trading offers and how much I'll get for it on eBay and things like that. And I could get a relatively good price, but at the moment I feel you can't get much for trading in with the Z mount as much as you could before. That's just the way it is now. I thought I'd give the 1.2 one last dance, and I had a Warwick graduation ball and I thought, well, I needed something. It just seemed to fit the bill a bit more because I didn't know what I was going into, and I'm glad I did use this lens because it was really dark. It was a silhouette dance floor, so the people were in silhouette, bright background. It had to be quick focus, had to be quick moving with it, and the 1.2 did flawlessly. I shot openly 1.2 group shots, which I can do if they're all more or less in the same depth of field line, and it found focus straight away. It was fast, snappy. So I found with the 58 that it wasn't so good at cropping in as the 1.2.
It actually looks like a 2.8 on the 58 compared to the shooting at 1.2 on the 50. That's quite remarkable. That's a massive achievement.
You can crop in so far with the 51.2 or the 1.8, and you can make different compositions, which is nice because when you're using prime lenses you can't always move with your feet as much. And it wasn't slow. The 58 wasn't slow by any means. I call it a leisurely lens now, whereas these are more, I see them as tools as well as can be artistic. So with lower light as well, I did a few lower light shoots with the 58, and it, you know, it has that old kind of cha-ching, cha-ching, it goes in and out a bit more, even with the Z8, which is incredible, and it does upgrade any lens you have really. It does really well on the ZFC actually, because it's quite really small and portable, even with the FTZ adapter. But then I was finding I was just using the Viltrox lenses for my ZFC because they're even smaller and even lighter. So I've got my 23 and my 33. I ended up not using the 58 for the last 4 weeks. I thought, well, when am I going to use this then? 15 to 20% more space because it's that 8mm over. Now I know that doesn't sound a lot. I didn't really consider that before I bought it. But I always find myself in tight situations generally at events and weddings, and just generally I'm used to the 50mm focal length, and I know kind of where I need to stand and what the image will look like intrinsically without really even looking through the camera. With a 58 I needed to step back a good meter. I've had quite strong gear acquisition syndrome, as we all know now on YouTube, but it seems to be talked down about that it's not a bad thing having this, because I love technology, I love gear, I love the engineering of lenses and trying them out and finding all their intricacies, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you recognise it as a separate thing to actually the art of photography. Because, you know, I do have a lot of lenses that I don't use very often now. Well, I've tried the 58, I really enjoyed it, but it just wasn't fitting into my current style and my needs. And it's okay to try different lenses, it's okay to buy lenses, and then, I mean, it's often the case, isn't it, that if you trade in, especially with Z mount at the moment, I've got quotes for a lot of my lenses just to see what they're worth. This 51.8, which is an incredible lens, without a doubt. It's a very powerful, probably the best lens you could get on a budget for the Z mount, without a doubt. But if you traded this in, you'd barely get anything for it, so it's not really worth selling. But it's often the case that you'd spend a lot more than you're trading in, and this lens brand new is over £2,000. They're a lot closer in quality than that. We've done a few videos on this about how close they are in quality with these two lenses, and you'd have to spend a lot more to get a bit more, and that's kind of the way it is with technology, with any technology. So I got a quote for £100 less than I bought it for 4 months ago, and it's an f-mount lens, quite old, and has a few scuff marks, and I was happy with that. I thought, let's take it, let's do it. And so I've sold my new favourite lens. But I guess in all honesty, I was a bit disappointed that it didn't have a more unique look, because I think the Nikon bodies kind of balance them out a bit more now. Although I sent 2 different weddings to Loz, and I used the 51.2 in one of them and the 58 in the other, and he recognised which one was which straight away in a blind test. He said the 58 had a more vintage look to it, and that's kind of what you're buying it for, isn't it? And he's right, you can slightly tell that I used which lens is which. I mean, the Z lenses are great, but they have a cooler micro contrast, edgier look to them, which is a modern look, which is fine. It's not saying it's good or bad, but it's certainly different from more older lenses. So I'm seeing the payment, the £100 difference that I lost on the 58 as a loan for those 4 months, and I'm happy with that. So I'm very nostalgic about my 50 1.4g lens, and it's my first DSLR prime I ever used, and I used it for several years, really unquestioned. Okay, it was hazy wide open, didn't use it wide open very often, but I could stop down with it, and I never really questioned it because it did the job. I did use it for music and events, and it had a nice look about it. So when I did trade that in for, well, I got the 50 1.8s. Seems like a whole new generation of life and different style. In a way, I regret getting rid of the 50 1.4g, even though I'd probably never use it. My 58 that I traded in was worn out a bit, but it's worth more than the 50 1.8 brand new. Especially on used, you can get this lens for about £450. But this is obviously much updated, much sharper, and corrects a lot of the issues older lenses have. So there's a strange pricing going on at the moment. I mean, if you look at this in a more pragmatic viewpoint, sometimes I look at the intricacies of lenses and the subject separation. Shooting at 1.8 is perfectly good for most things. There is subject separation there. But for me, it's more of a challenge and the fun and being more artistic to use a 1.2 at 1.2 to get the really dreamy, airy look. And that's kind of what my style is now, what I want to portray. But really, pragmatically, they're all good lenses and they're all going to do a good job. There we go, I sold my new favourite lens. But I've got no regrets about that at the moment. Maybe I will. Maybe that lens will become even more of a cult classic in the future. So have you ever had to sell or ended up selling a lens that you thought you'd never sell or wanted forever? I have a great array of lenses, and it's sometimes hard to distinguish between if I need a lens or want it. Like my next one on the list is the 180-600. I'm like, well, it is better than the 200-500 in every way, but pragmatically I got great, fantastic results with the lens I have already, the 200-500. But it's hard to sometimes distinguish between, will it open up new arena for my photography? Will it give me new artistic insight and create things that I couldn't before? So it's hard kind of to justify it to yourself sometimes, and maybe you don't have to. Photography is pleasurable, the gear is pleasurable, buying and selling is fun for me, so just enjoy it.